Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Cheryl, can you call the roll, please?
Joe Burden.
Here.
Dennis Gagnon.
Here.
Peter Lewis.
Here.
Laura O'Connell. Here. Bob Usardi.
Here.
Heidi Wendell. Here. Neil Zuckerman.
Here. Thank you very much. Okay. Well, welcome to the May edition, this first glimpses of summer edition of the Philipstown Planning Board. I'd like to suggest something to the public here. There's a lot of new faces, some old faces that like to come to hearings. Glad to see them as well. There's those at home. I'd like to make a suggestion as they change seasons. It is not a bad time to get religion. I've gotten religion in the last couple of months. You pray a lot and things may not happen, but when your prayers get listened to and God says yes, it makes you become a penitent man. And so my New York Knicks have performed incredibly well. I've had season tickets for 11 years, and we're in the finals. You wouldn't believe how many friends I have who want to pray with me. A couple of you in this room have prayed with me there, and more will soon. And so I ask you to not bow your heads, but as they said once, raise your head to God and ask Him for His blessing on the Knicks, whether it's the Spurs or whether it's the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think they'll prevail because God, I think, is on the Knicks and New York side. So with that, may I have a motion to approve the minutes from the April board meeting? Thank you, Joe. Second, Dennis. Any edits, corrections, deletions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstention. Motion passes. Thank you very much. Correspondence. I see one Glenn Watson here in the audience. That must mean Hudson Highlands Reserve is back for an extension.
Yes, please.
Could you give us a little bit more?
Well, I've been here. This is the fourth time I'm asking for an extension. I still am hopeful I will not need it. And the first three times didn't have much to tell you. But today the health department signed the plat. Today we got a call from DOT that they're going to issue the PIN tomorrow. And Mr. Gaynor is about ready to issue his approval. So we're hopeful we don't need it, but you never can tell. So we're asking you for that 90-day extension again, just for insurance.
Insurance. Faith is a good thing, but having approval is also pretty good.
I did
too.
pray for it.
That's good. Well, again, as I said earlier, there's other places to put your prayers these days. So I'll ask for a motion, a second, then any discussion. I have a motion to actually, let me ask Ron, any clarifying comments you want to add on this?
No, not at all.
Not at all. I have a motion then to extend a fourth 90-day extension to the Hudson Highlands Reserve. Thank you. Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye. 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 Opposed, abstention. Your extension is approved. I hope to not see you in 90 days, but I realize to avoid New York City income tax, you have to spend a lot of time up here too, so hopefully we'll see you around town.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Okay. We have a couple of letters related to Upland Drive. I don't think it's worth reading them out loud, but I would happily engage in a conversation with the board and our advisors on those letters if folks want to comment on them.
My question is, why are they coming to us?
Well, that's a great question. I don't know. Any comments from our talented staff?
I didn't hear the question.
The question was, why are we receiving these Upland letters at this moment? Any input?
Currently, the applicant is attempting to address the board's request to have more detailed engineering documents prepared. There's been a long-standing issue with understanding stormwater drainage throughout the project. That still has to be resolved.
Both letters specifically dealt with the crowded nature and the unimproved nature of the road. So where are we on our referral to fire related to them?
Yeah, I do believe that we've made referrals in the past. The project has been around for several years
Yes.
now. But on the basis of this, I would propose to reissue a letter on the board's behalf, just confirming the status of access.
Excellent.
We typically, on any of those private roads, seek the input of emergency services to assure continued access, and I'll make sure that we get at least we give them another opportunity to comment
Thank you.
on these issues.
And I would add, I would include both letters we received as, because I think having a professional response would be helpful. Thank you.
I just want to add that the letters are concerns in where they are asking the town to take over the road and not have it be a private road, and that is not at the jurisdiction of the planning board.
Well said. Well said. Is that a topic, Ron or Dominic, that is worthy of raising to the town board, either via our 2 town board members in the room or more formally?
Well, the planning board could always, copy these letters over to the town board for the town board's consideration. But ultimately, it is a town board decision, and the request actually should be made directly from the residents to the town board rather than through the planning board. As the board member noted, this board doesn't have any jurisdiction over whether or not a road is public or private.
It may be overly formal to go back to Zeph and David Lilburne to recommend that may be an action they take. I don't know if that's crazy. If we go back to these 2 letter writers and say, not a crazy notion to send a formal letter to the town board, or is there some other process for requesting them? We got these letters already. Right. So, well, there you go then.
Is that done?
I think, to clarify things, it would probably be helpful to go back to them and say that their correspondence has been received, their comments noted, but that the planning board itself does not have jurisdiction over whether or not a road is public or private. And that, that's governed solely by the town board. Not to put pressure on the town board, but it's just not something for the for this board to weigh in on.
Any other comments? Okay. Other comments? Okay. I think many of you are excited, or at least anticipating the next topic to the main event, the public hearing for Krasniqi Plaza. Cheryl, would you mind reading the project plan? Then we're going to have the applicant describe the project, and then we'll take in an orderly fashion comments. In years past, I've created a time limit. I'll describe the ground rules for the public comments when we get there. So Cheryl, read the public notice, please.
The Planning Board of the Town of Philipstown, New York will hold a public hearing on Thursday, May 28th, 2026, starting at 7:30 p.m. at the Philipstown Town Hall, 238 Main Street, Cold Spring, New York, 10516, to consider the following application. Krasniqi Plaza, LLC, 3626 Route 9, Cold Spring, New York, 10516. Tax map number 17-1-43, project major site plan. Applicant's proposal involves construction of a 9,500 square foot building in the front and a 5,300 square foot building in the rear. The applicant proposes to use the front building for offices relating to their existing fencing and heating oil businesses. The rear building would be subdivided into 4 units for contractor storage, and office space. Also proposed is an 8,800 square foot outdoor storage area, driveways, parking, landscaping, stormwater management practices, and a septic system and a drilled well. Dated at Philipstown, New York, this 23rd day of April, 2026. Neil Zuckerman, Chair.
Okay, gentlemen.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. For the record, Brad Schwartz from Zarin Steinmetz representing the applicant. We have our full team here this evening. And what you're going to hear tonight, everyone, is that the project really hasn't changed a whole lot since the last time there was a public hearing on this application. The one key difference is that the applicant now has, from New York State DOT, conceptual approval for the proposed new driveway and curb cut on US Route 9. And for those members of the public who may not realize, DOT is the state agency having jurisdiction over those kinds of improvements. Our consultants have also been talking to DOT together with your board's consultant about additional mitigation. DOT has been open and receptive to those suggestions, and you're going to hear more about that tonight as well, in addition to the three pieces of information that your board had requested last time: additional crash data, a 3D rendering, and more information about a land dedication for a future right turn lane. You'll hear all about those matters during our presentation this evening, and I'll turn it to Adam to walk you all through the site plan.
Good evening, Adam Thyberg from Insight Engineering. As Brad mentioned, just for the benefit of the public and the board, I'll just give a very quick reintroduction to the site plan. As was mentioned, the applicant's proposing to construct 2 new buildings. I can kind of point here. The front building would be the 9,500 square foot building that would be used for the applicant's fencing business. The rear building, building 2, would have a 4,000 square foot footprint and would contain up to 4 units of general contractor storage and office space. A detailed statement of use has been provided. Just lay out all of the details of the proposed use, employee counts, and all of that. I also want to restate that there is no proposed storage of bulk heating oil on the site. I also want to restate that, as proposed, the project is wholly zoning compliant. We're not seeking any variances for this. As was mentioned in December, DOT provided a letter that they had no further technical comments regarding the layout of or design of the driveway. Prior to that, DOT conducted a detailed review of the driveway design. As part of that review, we've responded to a series of comments. And the primary change that is material to the site plan is that the driveway was shifted a few feet to the north. But DOT was at that point satisfied that we could move to the final stages of permitting, which really includes clerical things like providing contractor insurances and establishing bonds, but that they were satisfied with the design of the driveway at this point. Otherwise, the site plan is essentially the same as it was when we were last before the board several months ago. The proposed use, programming, square footages, these all remain the same. One minor change that we did want to bring to the board's attention was submitted with our packet for this meeting, is there is a minor change to the proposed building. Let me just jump to the rendering here. The board may remember that in earlier versions there were 2 doors near the front of the building, and there was on the southern end there was a tower that had a different finish to it. The square footages, everything else about the building is essentially the same, but the tower has been removed and there are now 4 doors near the front. So we think it's a little bit more uniform, and it'll kind of set into its surroundings a little nicer. But otherwise, the buildings are the same as what was previously shown. So we're also joined by the project traffic engineer, Amanda LaRosa, and she has a couple other updates to share.
Through the renderings that they had asked for last time.
Yep.
So the property line, the right turn lane.
Sure. Yeah, we can.
The land for the right turn lane.
Yep. We'll quickly go through. So we've got here in the blue. The blue dashed line is the existing property line. Obviously, you can see the buildings, you can see the proposed driveway. The red, as Brad had mentioned earlier, is a proposed dedication parcel that could be conveyed to the town in the event they wanted to seek, or the town board wanted to seek, a right turn lane here. So we worked with the traffic engineer to understand the depth that would be required to achieve that. And as was discussed at the last meeting, landscaping, it's the same landscaping that was shown previously, but we've just shifted it back out of that proposed dedication parcel, so that in the event that the town wanted to go forward with a right-hand turn lane, there wouldn't be any need to move or replace any of the proposed landscaping. So this red portion here is what would be proposed to be dedicated, and that could be used in the event the right turn lane was to be put in.
Good evening. I'm Amanda LaRosa, traffic engineer with Creighton Manning Engineering. My firm was retained by the applicant to prepare a traffic assessment letter, which was submitted to this board back in July of 2024. That report spoke to the expected trip volumes and concluded that the traffic volumes associated with the development would not significantly impact traffic operations on the adjacent roadway and at the adjacent intersection. Over the course of the application, Creighton Manning has corresponded with both the with both the town and DOT's engineers regarding the application, and most recently we've submitted a memo supplementing the crash data from the original report that provided an additional 28 months of crash data, and our conclusion was that there were no additional crashes along the site frontage or at the immediately adjacent intersection. And then finally, the most recent change that you've just heard about was the dedication to provide space for the right turn bay should that ever be pursued in the future. With that, I'll turn it back to council.
I guess just to pick up on that last point, and it goes back to the letter.
Wait, you can bring the mic.
And the letters on that we talked about a couple minutes ago, right? The town board ultimately would have jurisdiction over that right turn lane and accepting that land dedication in the future. But I could work with your board's counsel on appropriate language in the approvals, perhaps an offer dedication, whatever it would be, make the board comfortable to know that that offer was standing in perpetuity, that the town could accept at any moment in the future. So it's a standing offer of dedication. And that completes our presentation.
Ron, anything you want to add that will help the public best interpret what was just said related to the project?
Yeah, the project's been before the board for, I think, more than a year and a half. For the last, for the majority of that time, they've been wrestling with the issues of traffic. They've now been at the point where they're bringing those issues to a close. The town's traffic consultant is here to provide his assessment. But the issue of the general site issues that the board normally deals with on site plan applications, for the most part, they've been addressed. We will make one final review with the design engineer to be sure they're resolved. But this is at a point where the board should be ready to take action unless you hear some new adverse impacts that are voiced tonight.
Okay. I'm going to ask our effectively traffic assessment advisor to come up and give his take on it, just because I think this will help put more context for what the public may want to say, instead of waiting for them to say it for then you to get up and then respond to it. So why don't you just give your take on the Creighton Manning work from
Absolutely.
give your CV, please, and then we'll get into it.
No problem. May I shut this? Is that okay? Yes. Thank you. Good evening. Anthony Russo from the firm SLR Consulting. We are out of New Paltz, New York. We've been hired by the town to review this application. So I'm going to take you through what we've done. The last time we were together, I'm going to start with the most recent correspondence. And I reviewed what the applicant submitted, and I submitted a letter to the board on May 27th. So basically, as you heard before, there was a request at the last meeting for additional crash data. The applicant contacted New York State DOT. They provided the most recent crash data, another 28 months to bring it up to the most recent information that's available. And the finding was there was no crashes at the intersection of East Mountain Road and US Route 9 or in the proximity of the proposed project. So that was one piece of information. The other thing, in terms of the right turn lane, there was concern about how that would affect the landscaping. As you can see from what the applicant presented tonight, that they pushed the landscaping back. So if the town was ever to go forward with the right turn lane, if they decided to, the landscaping would be unaffected by that. So those are the two things that came up during our last meeting that the applicant has addressed, and I have no further comment on that, and that was stated in my May 27th letter. The other thing I thought would be helpful to the board, I reached out again to New York State DOT. I spoke to the reviewer who looked at this application, Cassandra Bibbo at Region 8 in Poughkeepsie, and she provided an email to me, which I forwarded to Cheryl, and she forwarded to the board members. This is the methodology and the procedure that DOT typically goes through when they get a project, and how they go from the inception of the project, their review, to granting an applicant conceptual approval. So as you can see here, they look at roadway volumes, they look at where the intersection is going to go in relation to adjacent driveways, public roadways. There's a number of items listed here that they go through a very detailed review. and she outlined it here. And the applicant met with DOT. They made a slight adjustment to the driveway, which is an improvement because it moves it further from the horizontal curve, improves sight distance. It also gets it away from one of the utility poles, which would be a fixed object, which can block driver's view. So that's pushed further north, so that's not an issue anymore. So DOT went through their very thorough and rigorous review of this, and what they concluded is with the tweak in the driveway that they made, that they granted conceptual approval to the applicant, and they gave that in the letter form. And this is the methodology that they use. I thought it'd be helpful for the board to see that. But what's also here, I think, important is that they say it's conceptual, and it's subject to two things. It's subject to the town approving the project with improvement measures that I'd like to see, or the town could reject the project. Then there wouldn't be a need for a highway work permit. If the town approves it, the next thing they have to go through is a highway work permit process. If the town were to approve it, my recommendation to the town is, as the applicant goes through the highway work permit process, they copy the town on all correspondence, so the town can see whatever they approved is constructed that way, and there's no surprises or changes during the highway work permit process. The review that SLR did, we went through about 3 or 4 rounds with the applicant, and we had a phone call with DOT, and we said, okay, so you gave him conceptual approval, but there are some things that we would like to see. I participated on that call with Ron Gaynor, the town engineer, and some of the improvements that were recommended that DOT said they're open to, and this is again the town input that they seek when they do this type of review, is there was lighting at the driveway, which won't be a distraction to drivers on the road, but it'll be able for people on US Route 9 to see the driveway clearly, and also for people exiting the driveway, they can see traffic. So lighting is now part of the project, and DOT said they were fine with that. The other improvement was putting on US Route 9 driveway warning signs, warning drivers of the driveway at Danes Lumber and also at the proposed project, the Krasniqi project. The other recommendation was for a dynamic speed sign to be put on Route 9. DOT says that they are again open to that improvement. Dynamic speed signs have been shown to have a driver compliance of about 80% of the drivers. When they see those signs, they pay attention to it. They typically slow down about 3 to 7 miles per hour. So the lighting, the static sign for the driveways ahead, and the dynamic sign which flashes your speed, DOT was in favor of those improvements. Those improvements were not part of the original proposal from the applicant or from DOT, but the board instructed me and Ron to speak to DOT, express some of our concerns, and they've agreed to these improvements. So we gave it a hard look, so did DOT. Based on all the engineering standards, they meet the requirement in terms of spacing from a public road, in this case East Mountain Road. They meet the requirement of spacing from Danes Lumber, the driveway. Their traffic volume is very low for the peak hours, less than 30. And the recommendations that we made based in the meeting we had with DOT, which I just outlined a few seconds ago, DOT is open to those improvements. So from a traffic engineering standpoint, they followed the appropriate methodology. They use standard traffic engineering principles and methodology. So all the boxes have been checked from that standpoint. The same thing with my review, but they have to put these improvements in my opinion, and DOT is open to that. With that said, I don't discount any experience the public has. There was another issue that came up. They provided counts in their, the applicant provided counts in their first traffic study. SLR went out and did their own traffic counts. Our traffic counts are much higher than their traffic counts. Now, the reason for that, as it turns out, when we did our traffic counts, and DOT confirmed this in the conversation, that our counts were higher because at that time they were doing construction on 9D at the tunnel, and traffic was being diverted, and Route 9 was experiencing heavier traffic during that time. So that was the reason why the SLR volumes are higher. And also the delays that we observed, people turning out of East Mountain or turning out of Albany Post Road, of course they were higher because the traffic volumes were higher. So DOT said that the applicant's volumes are more in line with historically what goes on in US Route 9, not the volumes the SLR had because we did it during a time of construction. So they laid that issue to rest as well, DOT. But with that said, I don't discount at times, and it's the nature of unsignalized intersections on state roads. You're going to be time periods where you come there and you're going to go, ooh, today's a good day. I got through pretty quickly and made my left turn. There's going to be times when you're going to go there and say, it takes me a little longer today. I want to be safe. I want to make sure I got the right gap. And that's the way it is. This project, based on DOT's review and my review and the volumes they're generating and the improvement measures, it's not going to significantly impact that. So that's the long and short of it, and I hope that's helpful for the board.
That is. Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to move to the public hearing, part of the public hearing. So, Cheryl, you have a list? Just raise your hand if you want to speak, please. 1, 2, 3, 4. Only 4 people. 5. Anyone else? 6. Anyone else? No? Okay, let's just start. Bettina, you raised your hand first. You seem excited. And then Cheryl's going to read the names. So just come up to the mic. A couple ground rules. One, I'm not going to put a time limit on you, but if you start repeating yourself, I'm going to ask you to just wind it up. And please speak on the matter related to what we just heard about. I don't want people giving speeches about they don't like something down on 9D, because we're not talking about 9D. Then certainly don't talk about how much you like the Spurs or the Oklahoma City Thunder. That would really irritate me. I said there's no time limit. Just if you repeat yourself, I'm going to ask you to wind it up. And if you talk off the topic, I'll be asking you to also wind it down. So, Bettina, the floor is yours, and then followed by Madeline. And then we'll just get into a routine, whoever you got next. Bettina, the floor is yours.
Hello.
Go.
Bettina Utz, East Mon Road North. I've been living there for 19 years, so lots of changes during that time, of course. So it's actually good timing because I wanted to pick up on the applicant's traffic engineer's statement that there were no additional crashes in the vicinity. So I took the time and went through the table that came with their letter from May 12th and made a little visual for crashes that actually happened in that area. And nobody probably sees it in the audience, but I can hand these actually out. And there was a new crash right by East Mountain Road North. So each star is a crash, a new crash from that latest.
I'll just pass it on.
Yeah.
Just give me that.
And we see that there was actually one crash, it said on the DOT table, north of East Mountain Road North, close to Boulder Road. Now, Boulder Road is right next to East Mountain Road North. I would count that as a crash in the vicinity of the project and in the vicinity of my road. And then there were a couple more, of course, on the up until Carroll Lane that I would also say are in the vicinity. That's the 55-mile-an-hour stretch, heavily susceptible to car crashes. So I think we should maybe amend this. There were new crashes in that area. I think it's important to note that. Maybe just as a side note, there were 17 accidents in total on 2 miles, on a 2-mile stretch in 28 months. 1 was fatal, 9 involved injuries, 5 rear ends, and those are the ones that we're afraid of because we have to take left turns into our road, and many of our neighbors have been rear-ended there. So basically that statement that there were no new crashes is actually misleading, and it gives us a false impression of safety. Meanwhile, it is a very dangerous corridor. Also, I wanted to pick up on the dynamic speed sign, which really doesn't make all that much sense to me, maybe when you travel north, because there is a 45 miles per hour sign at some point before East Mountain Road North, I believe. But going south, it's 55 miles an hour. So that would not help us for that direction. People will go fast. I would actually like to see if we can pull up that rendering looking south. Would you be able to? Thank you. There was a rendering where you look south on the road.
Why don't you keep talking, Bettina?
Yeah, I just wanted to show something. So basically what we're all concerned about is the proximity to East Mount Road north of that driveway. And we're thinking of, I have it here somewhere too. We're thinking, it's the one where you look south. Yeah, this one, exactly. So here on the left side is East Mount Road North. We sit here frequently trying to take a left turn into our road, and then cars are zipping by on the right side using that other road here that's Old Albany Post Road North to pass on the right. Now, if you imagine a truck or two trying to also take a left turn into the new driveway, there will be a backup. There will be queuing of trucks trying to take that same turn. At the same time, when you imagine a truck standing there, they take my view of oncoming traffic. So it will create a really, really precarious situation there. It's already when the cars pass you on the right and then continue on Route 9, they already take your the view of oncoming traffic. So it will create a problem. I'm also concerned, I think this is my last. Oh yeah, so the right turn lane I don't think will make a difference for us, but I believe there was already consensus on the board, or somebody mentioned it in the last meeting. I'm mostly worried about it being used for maybe staging trucks there. I don't know how more than one truck can actually fit into that driveway. When I look at the plans, how they have to maneuver to turn around, I don't see that two trucks can actually pass each other. So they have to go somewhere if they overlap by a minute or two. If that's the case, like we see further south, there's a warehouse where trucks are always on the side of the road on Route 9. They would completely block any type of sight of any traffic there. So there must be a way to avoid that trucks can actually park and idle on the side of the road before they can actually pull into the site. This is probably all I wanted to say. I just wanted to remind everyone also that this is it's a school bus route. I mean, I've said this many times. There are two different school buses passing this area every day, multiple times, which I think we should be also aware of. And the traffic study that came before the last one, the more recent one, actually showed 5 accidents, 5 crashes right on that intersection. And I find that this new project is creating a very unsafe situation. Thank you.
All right, Madeline, and then Cheryl, who else? Alice? Alice, you want to speak?
My name is Madeline McGinley. I live at 534 East Mountain Road North, and I've been there for 24 years. Regarding the revised driveway location, I was astounded reading the DOT letter with preliminary approval of the driveway, which indicated they had no comments. No comments? Adding slow-moving truck traffic, some with oil on them, serving several businesses in close proximity to East Mountain Road North in an already problematic area warrants a more detailed and comprehensive review. Even the planning board's own traffic consultant pointed out several existing conditions and potentially dangerous scenarios, and yet these points have been dismissed or deemed resolved by the applicant. Regarding the potential northbound right-hand turning lane, what is actually needed here is a southbound left-hand turn lane. It's often impossible to make the left-hand turn, so I drive further south to the Glassberry Court left-hand turn lane, then turn around in their park and drive north on Route 9 and make the easier right-hand turn onto East Mountain Road North. It's worth the detour, so I feel a little safer. Regarding the updated crash data, as Bettina pointed out, although the updated data from the past 28 months shows a blank at this intersection, the updated data lists several nearby rear-end accidents with injuries directly north, south, and across the road. An October 28, 2025 article in the Highlands Current featured a table of DOT crash data along Route 9 through October 26, 2024, showing 6 accidents at the East Mountain Road North intersection. This article, titled, quote, "Surviving Route 9, featured Philipstown residents' testimonials about the deep trauma caused by accidents on Route 9. I, myself, am a survivor of Route 9. I was the victim of a serious accident at the East Mountain Road North intersection and Route 9 in 2018. I was driving south, stopped to make the left turn to go home. As I waited with cars rushing alongside the shoulder, I was rear-ended by an 18-wheeler tractor trailer. My car was totaled and I suffered multiple injuries that took several years to recover from. And when the police came, he said, "Accidents happen here all the time." After my accident, there was an outpouring of empathy from many of my neighbors. They all had the same reaction. They were afraid to drive through that intersection, through the gateway to the mountain that we call home. There seemed to be a collective fear. Is that what we want for our community? At the April Planning Board meeting, the traffic data was prioritized over our experiences, which were portrayed as, quote, perception and, quote, anecdotal. But these perceptions are based on our day-to-day reality. The data does not measure fear, but it is as real as any other factor. The data only tells one part of the story. So I ask that our experiences also be given consideration by the Planning Board. Thank you.
Alice, and then who should come after? Richard, you'll be next.
Hello. Thank you for holding this hearing. I'm Alice Krakauer. I live at 563 East Mountain Road North, and I've had my house since 2003. Okay, I'm going to skip some because Bettina and Madeline handled them very well. The issue of crashes literally yards from our intersection that technically are not at the intersection of East Mountain Road North and Route 9. I think a larger problem is that the traffic data will be obsolete by the time Krasniqi is built because of two new developments in the works near this intersection: Century Aggregates concrete plant and especially Hudson Highlands Reserve, which will involve the construction and eventual use of, I believe it's 24 residences now. It's already dangerous to turn left onto or out of East Mountain Road North. It's not just people who live on the mountain who are saying that. Your own consultants observed those problems. And I just want to, the main two things that we're concerned about and which your SLR alluded to. One is, of course, coming down, okay, so this is oriented the way this is north-south, okay? But I did it this way. Maybe smoothly, but okay. So coming out of East Mountain Road North and making a left turn. Okay, so here's someone coming out of Krasniqi Plaza, making a left turn. And here we are coming out of East Mountain Road North to make the left turn. Okay, so that's one thing we're worried about. The other is something that SLR observed, that cars, and other people have commented on, cars invariably go through Old Albany Post Road, around whoever's waiting to turn left, okay, to go on south on Route 9. But there are cars sitting here waiting to turn left, blocking the view of both this car and any car exiting from Krasniqi to turn left onto Route 9 south, okay? So this guy's basically flying blind as to who's coming out of here. So these problems can only be exacerbated by a driveway 175 feet south and the increased traffic from the new developments. The applicant's TA, which I think means traffic assessment, if I'm correct, specifies that despite the 45-mile-per-hour speed limit at the site of the project, 15% of cars are traveling at least 55 miles per hour. So even if there's a dynamic speed sign, that reduces speed by 3 to 7 miles per hour, many cars will be going 48 to 52 miles per hour or higher. A car going 55 miles per hour travels 80.67 feet per second and travels 175 feet, which is the distance between East Mountain Road North and the driveway to Krasniqi. That 175 feet is traveled in 2.17 seconds. Okay, 1, 2. A car going 45 miles per hour travels 66 feet per second. I can give you the math on request. Okay, it's how many feet are in a mile, and so how many, blah, blah. Anyway, I can give it to you. A car going 45 miles, okay, did that already. So either way, whether it's a car going 55 or 45 or anywhere in between, there will be no time for cars to course correct for a slow truck lumbering out of Krasniqi Plaza in either of these two scenarios, okay? You're coming out of here, someone starts out of here, he doesn't see you coming out, neither of them see each other, right? So here's where they hit each other. Or this guy coming here who has no view of this truck, and this truck has no view of the guy behind the parked car here, coming out here. You know, I just don't see how there's not going to be an accident there. When you know, it's a 2 second to 2.65 traveling time, right? And then you got a slow truck coming out, no one's seeing each other. So I commend SLR for its excellent report, and I respectfully request that if there are any issues with which the planning board is not satisfied with DOT's response, that the board use its clout to challenge DOT's conclusions. I mean, I'm not asking you to file an Article 78 or anything, but, you know, I mean, I think, you know, they seem to be responsive to people talking to them, and so that's what I have to say. And I just have one final point, which is there's a lot of confusion in all these reports because there's a misconception that there's such a thing as East Mountain Road. There is no such thing as East Mountain Road. There are two roads. East Mountain Road North, right, which starts right near Krasniqi, and a different road entirely, East Mountain Road South, which starts south of Perks Plaza. These two roads intersect at the top of the mountain, but they're two roads, okay, so they can be a house at 100 East Mountain Road North and a house at 100 East Mountain Road South, and they're two totally different places. So I think throughout all the reports, we're always talking about East Mountain Road, and I think that's very confusing. And it's confusing in the crash data because there are crashes that are referred to as between East Mountain Road and blah, blah, and you don't really know what they're talking about. Okay, thanks very much.
Right, thanks, Alice. Richard, then followed by... Who wants to speak after Richard? Please raise your hand. Ma'am, why don't you come next, and then sir after that. So Richard, and then this young lady in the front.
I think...
introduce yourself, please.
Richard Butensky. Richard Butensky. I think Jalen Brunson would have a hard time navigating some of these
seems pretty
situations
amazing,
here.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what can be done here, but I do know that this is a problem intersection. I think we all know it's a problem intersection. There are times I just go the long way just so that I don't have to make a left turn at that intersection. And I always am looking in my rearview mirror as much as I'm looking at what's coming ahead of me to make the turn, because I'm always worried that somebody's going to come in and slam me from behind. I think the board should use whatever power they have to communicate. I know you've already done so, but whatever power the board has to communicate with the Department of Transportation and with the applicant to try to make this intersection safer. I think we owe it to ourselves and to the town to make it safer, not less safe. Unfortunately, that right turn lane that's being offered does not help with that. I think actually it can make it more dangerous. And I actually had an experience yesterday in a different location with something a situation very much like this one. And there wasn't a right turn lane, but there was a curb, and a truck that had its right turn signal on, and I was coming out to make a left, and it, at the last minute, moved into the side of the road to make its right turn. I don't know why, but because it did that, the oncoming car behind it, which I couldn't see, I was making a left because this guy was coming to a stop to make a right turn. He just came straight, and luckily I was moving quickly enough that I got out of the way. But it looked, I thought when that was happening, I said, that's exactly the situation we have here. And that could have been a disaster. I don't know what your capabilities are. I don't know what the board is allowed to do or not allowed to do, but whatever power the board has in this situation, I would urge you to exercise it to make this a safer situation, whether it be a left turn lane over there or something else. We need something there. We don't want to make that, it's already a very bad situation. I'd like it not to be worse. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Susan Hyatt. I live on Esselborn Road. Everybody's pretty much made all of the points, and I think we can agree that it's a very dangerous intersection. Bettina talked about some of the traffic mitigation, and my feeling is, and I don't mince words, those traffic mitigations are a joke. We don't need them on the northbound side of Route 9. I come down southbound Route 9 and turn left onto East Mountain Road North every day. And as Richard also noted, I spend 90% of the time looking in my rearview mirror because I'm waiting for that truck to slam right into me and not looking for a break in the traffic. We all know on East Mountain and probably in all of Philipstown that the left-hand turns are the ones when you take your life in your hands. I don't know what the answer is other than don't develop the property. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman in the back, and then anyone else after that? Anyone else? Okay, sir, floor is yours.
Hey, John Dwyer. I live on Mountain Brook Drive, so I'm on the opposite side of this. So I'm coming out from Old Albany Post, right? Now, I'm making the left heading north, where everybody's talked about the other side making a left. We cannot see actually nearly going right here at this moment in time. So when you come out, you actually have to come up. You can't come square. You actually have to come up at an angle. So you can actually turn out and actually see the other side of the road. I mean, I actually, like you've done what other people have done and gone down and turned, I've actually made a right, drive down to Nicholas, turn around in their parking lot and didn't drive back up the road, right? So we've been stuck with that. I mean, regardless of these people's project, and as everybody else said, this should be fixed to begin with, that we can't make a left because we cannot actually see the road. So you actually sit there for a long time. And as Dave said, if they are coming down, heading south, making a left, and we come up to make a left, the people behind them actually come in to hit us because they go around them as we're ready to go left. The other piece is, because you mentioned there's construction, there's a lot of construction going to happen and everything else, but when we did the construction on the bridge right in front of the Countryside Motel, where did the traffic go? It went down and used Old Albany Post Road as a bypass, right? And people flew down that road. And you know what I mean? They nearly hit us several times because we were coming out at the other end. And you know the other side of Old Albany Post Road, I see a lot of the construction vehicles that come out of our area. They come to there and they make the left heading up. And we have the same issue as most people here. When we want to turn back into Old Albany Post, we're using that crazy corner right there. You know what I mean? To be safer for us to drive up here and make the left. And like I have a 16-year-old daughter who's just started driving, right? I'm terrified of letting her out on that road right now because I'm afraid she's not going to be able to turn in or turn out. So we appreciate you listening to us. So whatever you can do to, regardless of this project, make this spot a much safer place for us so we can make a left and everybody in the town.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else want to speak in this public hearing? Going once. Going twice. Okay, motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make that one.
Dennis, second.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Public hearing is now closed. Thank you all for your comments. They were thoughtful, consistent, and clear. I think the best thing I'd like to ask, I mean, we can entertain a discussion now, but maybe the best thing to do is let us soak on it. I'd actually ask Ron if you could provide a summary of the public comments for us to discuss on our next board meeting. Maybe we'll put it on the calendar.
Sure.
I think we just have a more thoughtful discussion than just reacting to the public immediately, and then we'll have a discussion of maybe whatever mitigations we have in that conversation. Do you want to say something, sir? Okay, active listening. Okay.
I'd also assist the board if, when the minutes are transcribed, to provide them to the board's consultant for his response. Right.
Perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. All right. Anything else on this then? Dennis, please.
Quick question, Ron. I think it would be addressed to you, but if they go ahead in the future to use that donated land to put that right-hand turn lane, who pays for that portion of the work and also the removal and relocation of, I think there are 3 utility poles in that area?
That'll be done through a state DOT project.
So the town's not paying for any of that?
I couldn't tell you what the sharing might be with the town. I mean,
Okay.
it'll be a state project. Right.
There might be possible costs. Okay.
I don't know.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I was also going to suggest that it might be helpful actually for the board, if the applicant wanted to, would be to submit in advance of the next meeting their own response to the comments and concerns raised tonight, because they heard them as well and they may have additional thoughts or comments or suggestions that they may want to make, or their own view on the state of the application.
You're more than welcome to do that, and certainly when we have the board discussion, we'll probably be asking you live questions when we get together next time, so your presence would be requested.
So we will hold responses tonight, and we'll come
Yeah,
back.
I don't want you on the fly giving responses. I think that's not a productive approach. All right, anything else on this matter? Okay, thank you all. You're welcome to stay for the penultimate activities, but otherwise we'll move on to Vallone. A site visit was held, which I did not attend 2 weeks ago, I believe. I'm just opening up to my fellow board members who may, let's wait for the audience to leave and then we'll engage. Sure, if you want. I mean, I took a photograph of it, but okay, thank you. Thank you, Alice.
Hello.
Hello. Hello. Wow, they all just, that was it. They had enough. Oh, it's tonight Spurs? I mean, obviously I'm supposed to want the Spurs to win, but bye. Okay. Bye. Sorry. So, site visit was conducted a couple weeks ago. I would like to just open up for board member comments on your observations. This is of the Vallone property. Do you want to say something, Margaret, or no? All right, board members, comments, observations you want to share. Dennis?
I think we were waiting for comments coming from the Conservation Board and also Max Garfinkel regarding that.
Regarding the site visit?
Yeah.
Well, did anyone here individually have opinions? We can go. Let's go to correspondence and other groups first. I'd love to hear what everyone here thinks.
But I agree with Dennis that we didn't know exactly what to think, because when we went to the site visit, the people from the two people from the Conservation Board were checking out the couple of, areas that look like wetlands.
Yes.
And trying to determine what they were, whether they were just sort of, stormwater collection areas, or I think the one to the north was pretty clearly just like.
They're ditches.
Well, yeah, okay, so that's the right.
The DOT mows them, they cut down all the flora and fauna
Well, but
around them.
there was an awful lot of wetland, plant life in the southern one. So I think we were waiting to hear from the Conservation Board as to what we should think of it, frankly. I mean, the development is gonna go right to the edge of it.
Hold on. Two board members have just said they wanted to hear the opinion of the Conservation Board from the site visit. Got it. Anything else people observe with their own eyes and opinions that you want to share? Because I get it, we'll get that, but I don't know what to do with the question, and it's not for Margaret to answer. So, any other observations?
I have, if nobody else has.
Please, sir, the floor is yours.
The one issue of the flood baseline, Margaret, I don't know if you, I know it was Jason who was here last time. I think actually Jason did prepare a submission that indicated the base flood line elevation, and it seemed to me that the base from, again, I may not have been reading it right, but maybe I was, the flood level is higher than the existing grade by several feet. Am I right about that?
The whole site is within the floodplain.
Right, but how many feet is the difference between what the...
It's, so the top end of the floodplain is at, like 65, and the lower is at 63, and so it gradually increases as you're going west. And what's in front of the building is like 363.2, so it's barely out of the floodplain. The existing buildings are already there. There's nothing going to change about them. And the two buildings that are proposed are non-residential structures, and they wouldn't impact the floodplain because they're basically going to sit on the gravel. There isn't even going to be a concrete pad.
According to your client, it may be a little, it's not that big a point, but your client was talking about a slab instead of just putting it on railroad ties or something like that.
Yep.
But the flood law requires that there be 2 foot above the flood level, or I think there are a couple of alternatives perhaps that you could pursue with waterproofing or anchoring, things like that. But I don't know if that's an issue for the building inspector more than us, but if you're going to have to raise, let's say you have to raise the elevation of those two buildings, that may significantly affect the site plan. So that's one issue I wanted to just get on the table.
Do you want to comment on that?
Yes. So the way that you can construct the building is the mechanical equipment would have to be 2 feet above the floodplain, and a residential building would have to be 2 feet above the floodplain. But a garage, a structure that is not habitable is not subject to that same 2 foot requirement.
And Dominic, do you see it the same way?
So the applicant would need to get a floodplain permit from the building department, probably as a condition of the resolution, because even though you're not building a structure, you just have to get the permit because you're doing something in the floodplain. Great.
But it's permissible to build these structures in the floodplain.
Subject to the permit. It's issued by the building commissioner.
Okay.
Yeah, if I could speak to that for just a minute.
Please.
Just to be clear, the floodplain elevations, as Margaret's indicating, are between 365 and 363 USGS elevation across the site. The building, or the general elevation of the site in the area where the buildings are proposed are something over 361 and a half. So clearly a floodplain permit is required. They're working in the vicinity of the stream. There is a significant issue relative to habitable versus non-habitable space. This is not to be occupied, so there's some relief provided there, but you still have to obtain a floodplain permit, and that's still a subject to understanding the extent of flooding that might result from the provision of a building within that floodway. So those matters have to be addressed as part of the process. And you've got a technical review from my office. I've just suggested that information be identified on site plan, so it's clear what the obligation is and what the process needs to be to move that forward.
But is that this board, or is that the building inspector?
Ultimately, it's the building inspector. I just wanted flags so we all understand going in what that means.
Okay. So just to play it out, so let's just assume for kicks that this property was fallow. There was no building on it. And we knew the flood conditions. We've seen it, certainly, as I mentioned last time during, I forget which storms, Sandy or whatever. This building, the business at the time that was occupying it, was flooded. They had to mitigate it, remediate it, whatever the right term is. So let's just assume for kicks there was no building there, and there's this flooding issue at this property. And someone said, I'd like to build a non-occupied, a building, an office building, not a residence. Is that legal?
No, that's still occupied. An office is occupied. This is a garage that
I thought they had office space in this building.
That's an existing building.
I know, and what I'm saying is, I'm asking the hypothetical. Just play with me for a second. Fantasy world. There's nothing on this property.
Yes.
Someone wants to build office space on it. We know it's a flooding piece of fallow land, and someone says, I want to build an office on it. Can you build an office on a place that is known to be flooding?
Yeah, there's specific criteria that applies. If it's habitable space, they have to identify the base flood elevation, which is the 100-year floodplain or flood elevation. And then they have to be 2 feet above that for any occupied space. And then beyond that, you can't just get above the flood elevation. You also have to show what impacts result from having that obstruction in the floodway, because it impacts upstream properties. So that all has to be identified, and I just want to make it clear when the board moves this project along that it's clearly identified on plan.
So there are alternatives to the construction. You could allow gaps between the buildings so that actually water would go into the garages, and that would not impact the height of the floodplain elevation, which is common construction for non-habitable buildings.
Robert?
Yeah, I have some more, one or two more. The other is screening. I don't think the screening that's proposed in the site plan is adequate. It's a space that I think needs to be screened with some particularity, and that's because you're right at the intersection of two main roads. One is Route 9 and the other is Fishkill Road. With Fishkill Road being basically the entrance to the villages of Nelsonville and Cold Spring. And I think you've got something like 20,000 cars a day going by that particular location, and many of them will be stopped at the red light on either one of those roads with nothing better to do than to look onto this property and observe what's going on it. And if it's a mess, it's going to be, I think it's going to be bad for the town, the appearance of the town. So I would, and I don't see any plantings along Fishkill Road at all. And I would propose a fence, actually, and perhaps a fence on a small berm to provide adequate screening. And the last thing was the parking and it's, less of an issue for me, but I think it has to be addressed, is how do vehicles move on this property? Where do they park and how do they move in terms of loading and unloading? I mean, the concept is going to be you're going to have these big panel trucks, going into the site to unload and load from these two storage buildings, and what's the circulation on the site going to be like, and how many parking spaces are you going to have? You're going to need 3 parking spaces for the residences if you have 2 residences. You got a parking space, 1 or 2 parking spaces for the owner operating the office, and then you have, I guess, an employee or whatever, but you're also going to be parking one of these panel trucks there on a regular basis as well. So how does the site circulation work so that there's not a problem with the with the circulation on the site? The last thing I'll mention is when I was at the site, I had a little issue with turning into the property from Route 9 only because there was a backup from the traffic light there on Route 9, the southbound traffic on Route 9. It was a minor delay, and it's just a matter of less than 30 seconds, if that. But I could envision a situation where if you're having a great deal of in and out on that property, it might create a traffic problem. But from what I understand from speaking to the applicant, I think he said that to all of us there, that they're basically going to have 1 trip a day for the panel truck. So it seems like a very minimal kind of use. So I don't think it's an issue here, but it might be an issue with a different use. So I think there has to be some sort of note somewhere on the site plan about the number of trips per day. That's it.
Thank you. Anything you want to add to those?
I know that we do show 6 parking spaces on site. If you see here, there's 2, and there's 2 in the front, and then the panel truck and another parking space here. There's still no outside storage of any equipment. Everything is contained in the buildings, but the parking will be exterior.
Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
So one of the conditions that I like to include in my resolutions, and I'm not sure if this has been the board's practice in the past, but that the application and what's being approved is basically what's being applied for. And if the use changes or expands in the future, then they have to come back to the board for a reevaluation and amended approval if required. So if there is a change in use, or the buildings are used for a different occupant that is changing the frequency or intensity of use, the board in that scenario would retain jurisdiction, and they could conceivably come back before the board for an evaluation of that change.
I think that is in the code. It's in the town code.
What I heard Robert, though, say was he's questioning how the traffic flows on the property, not that there's spaces for it. Is that right? So.
Yeah, so we can show some turning radiuses to show how the cars can pull in and out of their parking spots.
Please. Okay. Other comments from your site visit? Yep,
Yeah.
please.
Will there be any, does the applicant have any plans to put any screening of the adjacent property with a neighboring property, just to screen the garage and the box trucks?
I don't believe there's enough space on their property to do that. Right here, so there's this drainage ditch, so to speak, here in the back. There's very little property between the building.
Another question I have is, during one of these hypothetical 100-year flood events, which direction is the storm water going to convey? Is it going to go through that swale, or is it?
Yeah, water would run off to the lowest point, and this swale travels to the northwest, the ditch.
Okay, so that would be channeling a lot of the stormwater runoff for that site.
Yes, there's a captured swale that runs into the existing ditch along the edge of the property. in the corner of Fishkill Road, and actually Fishkill Road and Route 9. Oops.
I think additional screening would be beneficial, but that's just my opinion.
Well, our code does specify that they have to screen to the maximum extent practicable, unless it's a retail business. This is not a retail business, so.
Right, it's not retail.
So I think I think you may want to take a look at additional screening to meet that criteria.
I mean, is a fence less objectionable than the side of a building? Is it?
It's a good question. Screening outside of the building is not screening, so.
Right.
I think let's take.
We can look at some
board
now.
member,
We can look at
Burton
some.
has commented. I'd like you to take the comment, and we'll go from
All
there.
right.
Thank you.
Other questions, please, Heidi.
I just have one question, and I don't know if it's relevant to what's happening here, but when you look at the site, it seems like maybe there was a fill that occurred in the past of some sort of wetland. I mean, it looks like there was a lot of water on that property at one point, and maybe it was filled in. Is that relevant to us, or would that have happened so long ago that we don't have to look at that? I mean, is it possible there was like a fill at that site?
Certainly it's possible, but it could have been 50 years ago or 100 years ago, or, I mean, the existing condition is, it's been this way for. We can ask Glenn, he might know.
Just kidding, Glenn, just kidding.
It's been this way for as long as I can remember. And that.
Okay, other questions? Comments? Hearing none. Oh, please, yep, please.
Just along with Heidi's comment, it's a reasonable comment to make, and I did actually try to look through the file. There was parking there for many years with a Comfort Master.
Right.
There was no site plan for it. So it's entirely possible that there was filling that was done on it, but we just don't know one way or another.
Okay. Okay. So next step is a public hearing. So motion to declare a public hearing for what, next session? Have a motion to that effect, please?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Dennis. Second. Thank you, Joe. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions. Duly noted, notified, or noticed, and all that good stuff, Cheryl. Thank you. You'll be available for next month?
I'm sure, yes. One of us will be here.
One of us, okay. Good. Anything else on this one? Ron?
Just for the board's knowledge, I have been in contact with Max, and they have expectation to be issuing a memorandum to the board.
Hopefully that will address whatever was that Dennis and Heidi referenced at the site visit. Okay, Sadove and Zweibon. There was an informal visit, I understand, from Heidi and Robert. Do you want to comment about your observations?
Heidi, go first.
Okay, Heidi, would you like to comment on your observations?
Yeah, I mean, it was really nicely staked out so we could walk around and see everything. Yeah, thank you for that. And I mean, there's an awful lot of trees that are still coming down, which was a little upsetting. And one thing is we talked to Jason about whether he could reroute the driveway to reduce the number of trees that would have to be cut down, and he said yes, that would really be easy to do. So I'm hoping nobody was like writing anything down, but now we're making a record of it. Bob, you were there for this too, and Jason said yes, he could definitely reroute the driveway to reduce at least the trees taken down for the driveway. And then there's going to be a lot of other trees. He actually said there's 100 trees that will be cut down.
Okay, so see all the green trees? Mm-hmm. Those trees are all dead. There's a locust blight, and those are all locust trees, so they're already dead. Even though they're coming down, they can't survive. They're presently have a disease and they're dying or dead. So
I would just say about dead trees that,
Whoa, what was that, Ron?
I just wanted to explain the color coding, so anybody looking at the
green would not sound like it's dead.
I know.
I don't know, maybe I'm crazy. Red sort of sounds dead. Better red than dead, you know? Little communism avoidance.
Here is our color coding chart.
Anyway, yeah, keep going, thank you. Green.
Those are existing trees that will be protected during construction. The red trees will have tree protection around them. They are not coming down.
So like green as in go chop it down. Green.
Go chop it down.
Oh, I see. I get it.
Yellow are
So
existing
this is
trees.
not a tree hugger chart, this is a tree chopper chart.
The yellow ones are trees that will be removed. The green ones are those were trees moved under previous site plan. Oh, I'm sorry, the blue ones are the dead ones. The green ones were under the previous site plan approval. They were already coming down. If you remember, this came before.
Came down, or
I don't believe they already came down, but
They did come down.
They did come down.
Yeah,
Okay.
Jason said they already cut a ton of trees down,
so then
and
they-
now they're gonna cut a whole bunch more because they've relocated the buildings on the
Can
property.
I just pause here for 1 second? Ron and Dominic, could you just please give a little education to the board about this tree topic? What does our code say to this board about tree removal? Is it silent on it? Does it advise us?
No, it's all just generated by the extent of disturbance that's shown on an approved site plan. The entity that monitors trees or controls tree removals is DEC, and it's through time of year and it's through habitat. And it's basically Indiana bat. There's a few species that are of concern, and anybody that's removing trees has to respect certain times of the year.
What I'm asking you is that assuming there's no endangered or otherwise species of protection in the trees, what is the guidance for this board about tree removal? Heidi clearly has a view that removing trees is less than good to some extent. I'm trying to get some guidance from you because I don't have an opinion about this.
The code just asks you to list them.
To list them. Okay.
Doesn't say anything about replacing them, or it doesn't, it's silent.
Laura.
But I just want to be clear, they're applying for an amended site plan.
Correct.
If I understand the color coding, the green trees are actually part of the initial approved plan.
Correct.
And so therefore, those have been approved, therefore they are approved to be removed. And were removed per that approval of that plan. And what we're seeing now is the additional trees that are needed due to the amendment.
Which color is that again? I can't read your font.
The yellow.
The yellow.
Right.
So there's about 15 trees that are yellow that they want.
Correct.
Okay.
So we're not talking about hundreds, we're just talking
15.
about 15.
Well, Jason said there's gonna be 100 trees cut down when Bob and I were there. So I don't know if that's consistent with what you're showing. I mean, the driveway alone had a ton of trees.
That's what I just.
So I don't know.
Okay, so there's clearly not 100 yellow trees in this picture. So let's just note that you have a concern about the tree removal, and there's clearly a difference between what Jason said and what this picture says. Okay, Rob.
I don't know. Well, let me just say this much, because I think there was some significant issues there. When I was out at the site, the ground was boggy, and I asked Jason, well, why is it, and I feel like I was standing on marshland, and he said, well, that's from the chipping and stump grinding that had gone on in the property before, and it was quite a bit of it. And from looking at the property, there was quite a bit of trees that were removed previously under this presumed previous site plan. But what concerned me more than that, I think, is that this is a full-blown estate property. They've got the whole 9 yards, the pool house, the garage, and everything but the tennis court. And there's going to be a lot of structures on this property that, if we're not careful, will be readily visible from Route 9D. The scenic Route 9D regulations do require that trees and shrubs be planted as deemed necessary by the planning board to reduce visibility of new structures from public roads or trails. And it goes on, it's pretty specific about the fact that the idea of this scenic district is to preserve the natural scenery and the natural vegetation, and that an applicant is required to minimize removal of native vegetation and avoid such removal unless it's absolutely necessary. But in any event, you have to provide screening from the public road. And when I was there, I got there early because I wanted to have the Arnold's flight experience, and it was very interesting. But I could see both of them pull up in their vehicles with no trouble, standing on the site where the buildings will go. And it was wide open, and a lot of road noise too, by the way. But you could readily see the traffic on Route 9D. And it seems to me that without some additional screening on this property, there's going to be a lot of visibility of these structures.
All right, other observations? Okay. Public hearing to schedule?
Yeah, you discussed the public hearing last time. You came to no consensus. There wasn't a vote to waive the hearing. So in my notes to the board, it's just a matter that you should determine whether you're going to have one. You should formally take an action to either schedule a date or to waive the hearing. It's a minor project. It's discretionary.
Are there thoughts on this public hearing? Let me do this. Let's just take a motion and a second and discuss. I have a motion to schedule a public hearing. Heidi, second. You'll second. Okay. Anyone opposed to having a public hearing on this?
I don't think it's necessary. So
You don't think it's necessary? So I got, let's all in favor. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. 1, 2.
Is this for a public hearing?
Yes. 3, 4. Okay, fine. Okay. All against? 1. Joe, you want to vote or not vote?
I'm gonna
Abstain courteously. All right, Joe's voting abstain. I'll vote no because, again, as I've told you before, a unanimous board is a sign of failed governance. So, congratulations. We're going to have one anyway. Next meeting? Yeah? Is that good? Fine. I think the throngs of attendees will probably be slightly less than we had tonight.
I would think.
I would think. That would be my bet. I've been playing a lot of time on DraftKings too, as per my Knicks obsession. I've made a decent amount of money in the last couple of weeks.
You do a parlay? You do a parlay?
No, every time I do the parlay, I lose. That's how they make their money on the parlay. So
I don't even
let
know
it
what
ride.
it is.
So
But
I may start creating a bet on Kalshi or prediction markets for votes of this board going forward. Is that legal for me to do, Counselor? Don't answer that. Okay. Any other thing on Sadove and Zweibon? Hearing none. Any new business for the board? Hearing none. Motion to adjourn. Thank you, Dennis. Second. Thank you. All right. Good night at all. See you soon.
Thank you, Neil.
Thank you all.